twin brothers from Chicago's Little Village neighborhood. Pedro and Margarito Flores were El Chapo's biggest distributors here in the Midwest. They used stash houses in the suburbs and modified vehicles to keep the pipeline flowing from Mexico to Chicago.
We get to Mazatlan.
Okay, so you're in Sinaloa.
I don't know.
Mazatlan's in the state of Sinaloa.
Okay. So we're standing in the parking garage, and next thing I know, phones start going off. Then I think it was a blue or black Hummer pulls in. And it's Chapo.
Hey, this is Jay Flores, and this is my reaction to Cartel Talk. This is Donald Wayne Tompkins, El Primo, on the Johnny Mitchell Show, The Connect. I don't know him. I'm not here to call him a liar or anything like that. I do believe that a lot of the things that he states are facts, and a lot of things that he's explaining are very true and accurate. I think that there's a lot of things that he may assume to be true to him, but they're not. Of course, this is just my ideas, my thoughts, right?
And so, but I don't know who he is. And so then they grabbed me, they put me under the pavilion. Only ones standing next to me is the chief. And then that's when this old man walks up. And Chapo is standing to the right of him. No, the left of him. Not saying that, but this old man was doing the talking. They had big ass things of weed laying out. Mm-hmm. They cut a triangle in it. And they asked me, how is this weed? I'm like, oh, it's good. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Sam ain't no good either at it. And the old man starts to negotiate with me. The old man is old man Mayo.
You just met Mayo Zambada.
Now, right. I seen Mayo Zambada before this, but didn't know who he was. Because when we first went down in there, who brought the chief over to the Sinaloa, it was not Chapo. It was the old man.
Right.
The fact that he states that he was around El Mayo and El Chapo at the pavilion where he's explaining is basically one of the biggest conferences that there is, and Chapo and Mayo wouldn't be out in public like that at one of those places. I think he could assume it. I did some research on El Primo. I couldn't find his paperwork for whatever reason, but I did find information of the person he was dealing with. The person he's dealing with, as he may think was like really high level, wasn't. He was more of a sicario. I know that he was involved with a lot of murders, but he was underneath one of my good friends, El Flaco Salguero, who was the leader of the Gente Nueva cartel, which he formed and basically created and is still active today. They're from Chihuahua. So I don't know this Mesa guy that he was actually dealing with, the person who he considered to be his connect, but I do know El Flaco very well. He was a really good friend of mine throughout my whole time in Mexico. We were introduced by one of my really good friends that was murdered, which was a cousin of his. And we did business together, and he dealt with mainly marijuana, especially in the times where, he could fall off. He was a big kingpin, though. He's currently serving a prison sentence here in the United States. And I believe that his sons and his brothers are actually running his organization still to this day. They're aligned with the Sinaloa cartel. And just to give you understanding why I'm assuming, right, because this is just my thoughts, is that he was dealing with someone who was underneath Noel Salguero. And Noel Salguero was more of a Chapo affiliate. As a matter of fact, I actually brokered a few arrangements between Chapo and Noel when they had a small fallout. There's a lot of back history and too much of a story to get into, but I believe that the person he was actually dealing with or seeing could have been Noel Salguero. And I'm not sure if it's one of those things where every Mexican looks alike, but I'm sure that the person he met wasn't El Mayo Zambada. I think that we could all just exaggerate a little or assume that he was speaking to this person or even speaking to Chapo. But from my understanding of being involved with the cartel, this person, Mesa, that he was actually dealing with was, Sicario, basically. Drug trafficker Sicario, head of a drug trafficking or a cell of Sicarios that was underneath Noel Salguero at the time. So I think that there's many more levels. And as much as I think El Primo wants to say that or sell that, the person he calls El Chief was just another Sicario or just another drug trafficker. I don't think he could ever had that type of importance because some of the people he's actually stating had no relevance really in the drug trafficking organization in the time he's actually speaking about. This is facts that I actually, would know. And I just think that El Primo's assuming this. But trust me, when you meet these drug lords, you know who is who. And if you don't, you ask. Those people who don't grow up in the culture, you're going to assume that every boss or every person you meet is a big boss or a heavy hitter, just like the way he assumed that Chief could have been this important person. And if you look him up and you know his background, he was more of a Sicario than a drug trafficker. So that basically explains everything. One thing that I do question is that he was explaining that he had been receiving large amounts of marijuana at that time. And for him to say that they brought him marijuana and he didn't know, if it was good or not or whatever he states, I think that's a little suspect.
And that's how I found out that the old man was really the one with the power and not Chapo.
In this particular clip right here, I could actually call you a liar or you don't know what you're talking about. You're reading newspapers, articles, whatever you're reading. So I will explain again. Mayo wasn't above Chapo. And these are facts. For all the media and these journalists and so-called experts stating that Chapo was underneath Mayo is 100% false. I will put my life on it. Everything that I know, everything that I said, everything I've been is that this is what they sell you. But the reality is that Chapo Guzman is a Chapo Guzman, one of the biggest jugglers in the world. And Mayo Zambada is just another really big drug lord. He's been the boss for 50 years. To people who don't understand, they always want a number one and number two. And that's not the case. Chapo's number one and El Mayo's number one. Now we go and we want to put a scale of, who was more powerful, who had more money. That's a different story. So the fact that he states this is that he's reading too many articles and media stuff. And in this particular situation, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And just to add to this, he states on becoming the biggest drug distributor for Sinaloa Cartel. I will explain that for the numbers he was doing, for the numbers he claims he was doing, he would have needed a lot more drugs to become that. You never heard me say that I was the biggest distributor because I wasn't. I was an important distributor, but I wasn't the biggest.
The old man had them open up the Durango Zoo. The Durango Zoo was closed down for renovation. They opened up the Durango Zoo and they let us in. I'm sitting at one end of the zoo. The old man is down at the other. It's like he got all military around him, a total different type of security.
Yeah.
And he had on the big white hat. And Chief was down talking to him. And this was on another trip, just for the sake of, And I believe that was when the agreement was made for the chief to come in, because then that's when all this other crazy stuff started happening.
Okay.
But back to the meeting. He wanted to send me, I think it was between 8 to 10 tons of marijuana a week. The driver that was going to bring it was there. So me and him was negotiating. The chief was standing next to me. I think we negotiated something like $400 or $500 a kilo, which is 2 pounds, and that's like 200. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
And that's the agreement we came to. He was happy with it.
So again, there's a lot of things that he knows that are factual. I do believe he had some direct dealings, and a lot of the business that he did were directly involved with El Chief, whoever he calls that. But right here, for instance, I'm gonna call bullshit where there's bullshit. This is bullshit. When you're talking about some of the biggest drug traffickers and drug lords in the world, they know the difference and they understand what drugs are worth in any part of the world. So for him to say that he was negotiating $250 per kilo is ridiculous. The price for a kilo is worth $30 to $50, $60 at the most in Mexico. But no matter what it is, it's negotiated per pound. They know the difference. They understand the difference. If he would have stated that he had some type of percentage or something like that in those business dealings, then that would have been different. But it would be stupid for the cartel to negotiate basic $250 per kilo, which is $250 for 1.2 pounds. when the going rate anywhere in the United States could be, anywhere from, $400 to $600-700 a pound, especially in those times he was actually talking about. And at the cheapest you could probably, negotiate it, basically planted or basically delivered, is maybe $400 a pound, which is very different from a kilo. 1 ton of marijuana is 2,200 pounds. So he's basically saying that he would get 1,000 kilos for $250,000. The going rate for a Mexican pound of marijuana at that time was just say 400,000. You're talking about 2,200 pounds of marijuana, which probably would equal to $1 million. There's no business or nothing of incentive for them to sell a pound for, or a kilo for $250 in Detroit. So here is a great example of him embellishing or him thinking or believing. For whatever reason, he does have a different reason why he's stating this, then he should have said it, but I'm reacting to what he said. And this is total bullshit.
The Flores twins were the biggest dope dealers out of Chicago.
When that started to happen, the Flores twins, I believe, were gone. So I don't know. I think they turned themselves in, or they got brought in like 08.
Okay.
Or somewhere in there.
Okay.
And at that time,
Meech is gone too.
Yeah, Meech is gone.
So
yeah.
you're it kind of.
Yeah, it's
You're
open.
kind of the man.
It's an open market for me now. In Chicago, they still had some heavy hitters up there. It's just they wasn't getting the numbers that I was getting. I understand. I haven't went to Sinaloa yet.
Right.
Well, my chief hasn't went to Sinaloa yet.
Okay.
We're still with Juarez.
Right.
So when I get the complaints that's going over there, I'm tapped in now. Everything that happens, I hear about. That's how I heard about that. Because the guys now, if somebody coming to Michigan getting the bricks cheaper than them, and Chicago's a hub, but it's a different stamp on it, or as they say, a different T-shirt, they're not going to say too much. But what started happening, the reason why they complained, because they were coming in Detroit, coming back with the same bricks that they had on the same stamp on a T-shirt.
Right.
They're like, how do you guys, if we're the main hub and we're taking care of all the states around, how the hell is all our people going to Detroit getting cheaper work there? And it's the same.
And why is that? Because you can move it faster.
Well,
that's just how it goes.
What I figured out that, and they remember I told you about the middleman playing the game,
right?
Holding the world. Oh, it's too high. It's too.
They had middlemen.
They started using me as a pace car to keep them honest.
Oh, like, hey, he's getting him for 16, so we should get him for 16.
Yeah. Well, what they would do, like I said, just to make sure I understand what you're saying, they may get it at a higher price, or they may get it at the same price, but they're selling it way more. And it's causing it to move at a certain pace, but I'm tearing ass. I'm shooting the lights out in the gym. So the people are coming over to me. But eventually they start giving me cheaper prices than them because they know I'm going to sell it fast and get them the money back.
So right here, Primo states that he was getting such a cheap number, and Johnny Mitchell loves to throw in the Flores twins and Big Meech, and you put him in the same category. Chicago's a hub. He does state that he's confused about the time. So I want to explain. I did turn myself in November 2008, well, December. And there was a drought, and the numbers were very high for the next 2 or 3 years. And I will explain, I was one of the biggest receivers of Sinaloa cocaine in the Midwest, including Chicago. And I received an average maybe anywhere from 2,000 to 2,500 kilos a month from the Sinaloa Cartel. And the prices I received were never cheaper than $15,000. That was the cheapest they could go. And for him to state that he was getting the number in Detroit for 16,000, I will tell you this. I could sell in Detroit for an average of $5,000 more than Chicago. If he was receiving the drugs anytime between 2009 to whenever he said he was around, basically Stevie Wonder or anyone could sell a large amount of drugs. Again, Detroit being a smaller city, he would be bigger than Big Meech, basically, if they were just actually selling in Detroit. And you'd have all the Canadians coming down because he's right across from Canada. In Canada, they're going to go for an average of, anywhere from $42,000 to $50,000. So I do think that he was getting probably a good price. I think he's over exaggerating his prices, and he's over exaggerating the weight he was actually thinking he was moving, because If I had him at 16 in Detroit, I probably would have sold 5,000 kilos. And he keeps talking about the stamps and the stamps on the T-shirts, and he does make sense there. That people could actually look at a type of work that was coming from one place and basically compare it to another place. But again, he states that this is not Sinaloa. At the time, the war with the Juarez cartel and the Carrillo Fuentes brothers started in 2004, and it was enhanced in 2006. So we all know that the Sinaloa drug cartel actually runs, the cocaine trade in Chicago. So it wouldn't have matched up to him to say he was dealing with Juarez, but yet, you know, competing with the Sinaloa cartel. That wouldn't make any sense for them to have the same type of drugs. I was directly involved with the people who were working out of Juarez, especially for the Sinaloa cartel. And again, stating back to the person he's dealing with, who I have no idea who he was, I think that he's very confused and he's actually putting stories together between, articles and stuff that he thinks he knows.
And I hear the chief speaking Spanish. Don't know what he's saying, but I know his voice. Then a voice come in. The chief says, why does it matter what he do? He didn't do it to you. I knew to shut the fuck up. Don't worry. When you're done, send the money. Shut the fuck up.
I don't get it.
The thing was,
They found a new distributor?
The next load that came was all Ferraris. It was all from Sinaloa. They switched over, but he was killing the market. He was destroying the market where Juarez couldn't come back with bricks no more, with the crown.
Oh, so he was lowering the price.
Lowering the price, and he Juarez. Because before, with that stamp, people trusted. They wouldn't even try to cook it or test it or finger it. They just bought it as much as they could buy.
Wow.
Because the monies that I was turning in had different denominations, but it got to the point that all the money I was turning in was all hundreds and fifties. Whenever you get all hundreds and fifties, that's the money that the drug dealers keep. Yeah. But that means these blowing their safes open to get all they can get, because they knew when they come back would be gone. Wow. So they would try to buy all they could.
Right.
So he wanted to them. I'm gonna put a bunch of bad bricks out there. I'm gonna hit it and to mark it up so nobody will touch a damn crown again.
This is where he gets he uses some experiences and then he gets into his fantasy world. First of all, it's true that at a particular time that if you have a certain type of stamp on a kilo and they look the same type of packaging, that customers could be, scared of it. If they're getting, some bad work off of it, they're not going to want to buy it. I mean, that's easy fixable. Me and my brother's organization, we didn't offer them to pick and choose. It either was like, if it was good, didn't matter what stamp on it, check it. If it's good, it's good. He continues to say that the cartel only used one certain type of stamp, which is ridiculous. If the people he was dealing with put a stamp on it, that could have happened, and it would just go to show that he was actually thinking he was dealing with a very big drug trafficking organization. But that wasn't the case, because there's many of stamps and labels that come with it. There's no way that one organization is going to receive, one type of label or brand or sticker. I don't think I ever saw the same type of sticker in any of the work. And, if I received, 500 kilos, I think there could have been 2 or 3 different type of stamps, especially coming from Sinaloa cartel. And I could go into why this happens. And I think he's confused, or he just exaggerate what he was saying. And he receives the same type of, labels for such a long time because he was dealing with the, that type of organization. And, when he talks the denomination, it's true about 50s and hundreds, but how long could you get that for? It takes a very long time to collect a large amount of hundreds. So when he says, everyone's coming out and getting their you basically safe money, he's basically almost saying that every hustler had a very large amount, and that doesn't exist. It could exist for some period of time, especially somewhere like in Detroit. But how many keys is he talking about? Because in a way, he's, sometimes saying that he's dealing with these large amounts of numbers. But, if you're dealing with 200 keys and, you get someone to basically come off their savings and buy, anywhere from, whatever, 80 to 140 keys, then that's believable. But that's not going to continue to happen. It seems like he's telling a story and he's making it seem like it happened all the time. And it seems to me that he's talking about one particular instant exaggerated into 100. Detroit is a very smaller market compared to Chicago. Um, and he states facts of the game, exaggerated by his own thoughts, beliefs, and mind, whatever he basically is trying to put together. So there's no way that hustlers have tens of twenties of millions of dollars put up to be able to buy these type of drugs. Because if that was the case, he would have had it. He doesn't state that either. So the story about labels being so important is make believe. This is just my reaction. You put your stuff out there, so I think it's valid for me to be able to have my opinion. There's one thing that I will say with my background and experience, it's better to come from someone like me than to come from someone on the internet that don't know what they're talking about. I will say that a lot of stuff that you do explain, that you do say, is coming from a place of knowledge. There's a couple of things I disagree with. I think that it's normal for you to embellish something when you're selling something. I'm not calling you a liar. I'm just saying that you can embellish it. To Johnny Mitchell, I will say that I think it would be better next time if you actually put the paperwork online. I know he said that there was paperwork on him. I researched, I couldn't find none. And we also know that the government likes to embellish as well. But I think it'd be great for your viewership to actually be able to go and look at the indictment or look at the documents or any court documents that are out there. And if you question mine, if you could actually Google me and look for court transcripts, grand jury statements, testimonies, anything that you want, it's on there. Again, no disrespect to you. I'm just giving you my thoughts. You put your information out there. I'm just basically giving you my opinion.
I want all your fans to listen to me. Ask me who the biggest pussies are in jail.
Who are the biggest pussies?
Cartel.
Why you said that?
They're the biggest pussies in prison. They don't fight. They're scared to death. They get extorted. They get abused. They get their cell phones taken. They're punks in prison. They're only...
Why?
I don't know. They're the biggest pussies in prison. They're the biggest pussies in prison.
Jeez.
So here we have Gene Borello, somebody who I was in prison with, somebody who I know very well. I believe he's done a good job of marketing himself, basically, where he goes at everyone because he knows it gets some views, and in return it gets people talking, and there's no such thing as but bad publicity. He knows that. He knows how to sell himself. When it comes to some of the stuff that he says about himself, about his life, I'll leave others to be the judgment of that. But in this instance, he's basically giving you his opinion of what he thinks and what he believes. And I was in prison with him, and later on he must have came across some other cartel members. I think that word is lightly used. I'm always emphasizing that not just because you're Mexican and you sold drugs, you were part of a cartel. Two different worlds. But if he's talking about some of the bosses he was around, and I'm gonna consider myself being amongst one of those, or some other people I know he was around, and later on, it's real easy to talk shit once you're not there, especially when you're on a podcast and you want those viewership and you want people to hate you. But if that's the case, I want to explain. When these individuals, very high ranking drug lords, come to prison, they're picking and choosing their battles. Someone who could be a drug lord is at a very different level than what Gene thinks he was at, or how important he thinks he was in his criminal world. He's a street dude. He's someone who was sent to do things. And when you're talking about bosses who are fighting really big cases, the last thing they're gonna do is go to the court with a charge on an assault or fighting or sending someone to get beat up, because they're the biggest targets for people to try to get Rule 35s or people to try to get time cut for them to go home. And smart big drug traffickers know this. So for him to state that, it's funny because he knows better. We're gonna go back into money is power, and if he thinks he had money, most of the people he wants to go at, it's a joke. So right now, him just saying that is just him trying to get viewerships. But from experience, I know that a lot of these big drug lords and some of the people he was around really are just trying to make sure that they don't fall into any problems or have any issues. And them same people that he's calling pussies or whatever the case is, are the same people that would probably have your family tied up and, who knows, do what to you. So I would say that, if he did have some altercation and he probably did steal something from one of them, because that's what he's said he's done for all those years is steal. He's considered to be a thief and, have that type of mindset. I would say that he stays in the United States and stays away from Colombia and Mexico and those countries where Mexican cartels and Colombian cartels exist. Again, anyone could come online and talk shit for viewership. And that just kind of shows, someone's personality and the way someone could be in the streets. He's sitting there with Anthony Arrieta, who was a very good friend of mine, who I'm sure has different thoughts and different beliefs. And again, I just think that's him just basically, selling himself, and he has done a very good job. I'm not saying this in a way to insult him. I just think that it's who he is. It's who he's always been. So nothing new, nothing different.
The thing about the cartel and you telling stories so openly about it is that I'm around all these Mexican gangster ass podcasters and rappers and shit. The cartel is a 4-letter word. Like, they just don't even get into that shit. And almost none of them probably even have any kind of experience with that kind of.
No. The cartels don't even respect these like LA gang, like Chicano gangbangers.
Right.
They don't even look at themselves as the same race.
Really?
Basically, they're like, oh, it's gringo, it's medio gringo, So it's because they're just from a completely different culture.
Yeah.
Chicanos have basically melded like old school white culture with some black culture mixed with their own thing.
Right.
But like, they're really not about the cartel, and the Sureños are these totally different, distinct kind of organisms,
Right.
So, and when I say I was with the cartel, they were just the plug.
Yeah.
I wasn't with, they didn't tell me where to sell.
Yeah.
They didn't tell me how much to buy. I had 3 or 4 different cells of these guys, from Durango or Sinaloa or wherever, Chihuahua.
Does it stand out to you now that maybe you didn't get in deep enough, that maybe like your stories would be a lot more entertaining if you had like a romance with the plug's daughter?
Oh, dude, I wish I would have done that, bro. I wish I would have done it 5 times as big.
So
man.
many crazy like.
Shouts out to No Jumper and to Johnny Mitchell to connect. Again, you put the stuff out there. I'm just reacting to it. First of all, I think that for people who see the content of Mexicans, I think they want everything to be relatable. So yes, Mexican drug cartels are different from American or Mexican American gangs. Do I believe that they respect them? I don't know if they consider them or think about them a lot. I do believe that, for example, the Sinaloa cartel had a dislike for the Mexican mafia and Sureños because of their affiliation with the Arellano Felix cartel. They were at war with them, so maybe they could have opted out to associate with any of them or deal with any of them, especially once so many big important drug traffickers started going to American prisons. Then they had to deal with the politics of a gang that powerful to be extorting them or taking advantage of them. So that could kind of play a big part, and I think that was why there's a prison gang called the Border Brothers or the Paisas formed. In particular, the Paisas, right, was to basically protect themselves from these gang extorting them in the United States. But do I think that they should be kind of compared? No, two very different organizations. You're comparing, Mexican American gangs into Mexicans who are involved in a business organizations. Very different. So I don't think that this should kind of be compared in any type of way. And then as far as Johnny Mitchell, I feel like, again, I would state that people think that because they deal with somebody from Mexico or there's somebody that has some type of relation to Sinaloa, to Durango, being from there, it automatically means that you're involved with somebody in the cartel. Listen, the cartel is not as big as people think. Johnny Mitchell, I think he admits that he was actually selling 50 pounds of marijuana And I think that it was high grade marijuana, which Mexican drug cartels were not really into. There's a lot of smaller drug trafficking organizations that were, but 50 pounds of marijuana are not going to get you into the door to being a big distributor of from Mexican drug cartel by far. I think the name the cartel sells, and you hear it and you see it everywhere, especially as of recently. I think there's different levels. Most of these people are dealing with someone who's just Mexican, and just being Mexican and being a drug dealer doesn't make you a part of a cartel. And I think that this is where people get it misconstrued or think they are because it sounds good and that's what they're selling, but that's far from the truth. And I will say, buying or distributing 50 pounds of marijuana or even 50 kilos would not mean that you're directly involved with someone in the cartel.
We are also following new exclusive reporting from the southern border detailing the dangers Border Patrol is facing every single day. News Nation has now learned that Border Patrol is on alert after Mexican cartels have given permission to its members to shoot at U.S. agents at the border. Now, this marks a significant escalation for the ongoing battle with those cartels and their smuggling operations there. Correspondent Allie Bradley is live in Eagle Pass, Texas, with some exclusive details. Allie?
Yeah, hey, Kelly. So it's long been kind of this understanding of sorts that the Mexican cartel stays over in Mexico. They don't fire on or attack U.S. law enforcement because it's bad for business. They will be shut down, and they know it. But there has been basically a war within the Sinaloa cartel, and that prompted this alert that we actually obtained that's circulating amongst Border Patrol that shows that cartel operatives have actually been given permission to shoot at U.S. Border Patrol agents because of their response to this fighting within the Sinaloa cartel. Border Patrol's response is prompting the deployment of Mexican law enforcement, which the cartel is trying to avoid here. So this alert was kicked out by the El Paso Sector Intelligence and Operations Center. It warns agents and officers of the threat on the south side of the border. The alert reminds agents to remain cognizant of their surroundings and to approach any cartel operatives with extreme caution. Now, this just as 2 days ago, contractors working on a ranch in the Eagle Pass area of the Del Rio sector, which is where we are, reported taking on fire from the Mexican side.
So this recent report about cartel members giving a green light to shoot at border agents, to me, this is 100% false information. I believe that this has turned political. I think that Kamala Harris had recently gone to the border, and I think that this is probably, law enforcement officers or maybe one particular person in charge, or, they stated that El Paso Intelligence Center had got this information. I would really love to see, the information, who they're getting it from. There is no way ever that any important figures in a Mexican drug cartel is going to state that it's okay for them to shoot law enforcement or to shoot at law enforcement. It doesn't make any sense for what. And I think that this actually puts, Border Patrol officers, law enforcement officers, and especially like the National Guard in jeopardy and puts their life at risk because they make the mistake of killing some innocent people because they're hyper vigilant and out guard because of this information. The only people that are going to be affected is going to be them. I spoke to a National Guard who's actually being stationed there, and the first thing he asked me was about this, and they fear for their life. And I think that, of course, anything could happen, especially with dealing with criminal activities and down in the border. But I think that giving or selling this false information basically puts in law enforcement and those people who are protecting the border in like this high tense, situations that will make them to do some mistakes, or fear will basically dictate to them how they handle situations. For the cartels, it's bad for business. This doesn't make any sense. I know the sell is that Mexican drug cartels violence is going to split over the border. We still haven't seen it. We've seen some, violence kind of spill over the border, but it was more targeted one. But for them to just say that they're going to basically, green light law enforcement is ridiculous. I think this is political, especially that, we have an election. I think it's to help a particular party that could help law enforcement. And I just want to make it clear, I'm for that. I'm for, stronger border security. I'm for, law enforcement support and making changes to secure the border. I'm just not for giving false information, because I think that this puts citizens and at risk, and it also puts law enforcement at risk. This is their life, and with law enforcement, it's like any bad decision could cost them their freedom as well and their livelihood. So this, from all of my knowledge and experience and involvement in the drug cartel and understanding how the business works, and reminding everyone that this is a business. There is no reason why to target, American law enforcement officers at all. To me, this is actually false news. And I would state to any news organization to ask where this information is coming from, and they're going to say it's going to be a source. The source is probably not going to be a reliable source.
Yeah, it does seem to be escalating, right? Because again, Cartel has always kind of maintained that they're staying on the south side of things. But we were just reporting on the Cartel CDN using drone jammers to actually go in and intercept U.S. drones surveillance technology and capabilities, something that is a huge devastation and detriment to the U.S. side. Now, alongside of that, they also found several IEDs and RPGs. Those are rocket launchers, basically, on the south side of the border, just across from Arizona. That, along with a slew of ammunition. So we're finding a lot of kind of military-grade weaponry.
News Nation is reporting that they found rocket launchers and grenades on the south side of the border. Military-style weapons been crossing that border into Mexico for decades. The United States is where the drug cartels actually get all their weaponry. They have heavy artillery and always had it. And it's been on the south side of the border for decades. This is nothing new. It's being sold as in we should worry about it today. But again, it's old news. You see it. You could go look for it on Cartel TikTok. You could look for it on any of these feeds on Reddit, that they're using these type of weaponry against each other. They're using drones against each other. And I think that she states that there is drone scramblers. The drone scramblers are used to fight against other drug cartels, because cartels are using drones right now to attack each other. Could this affect American drones? Possibly. But they're not doing it to affect American drones. They're doing it to affect the drones on the south side of the border. There's two very different lines that they're willing to, cross. And I'm not saying about the borderline. Most drug cartels will actually don't have a problem with messing with anything that has to do with Mexican government on the Mexican side. They will, make sure they use drone scramblers or military style weapons against law enforcement in Mexico, but will stay away from the American side. So again, that invisible line that separates Mexico and the United States are not crossed. Could it happen when they're using technology at times like that? Yes. So I think that reporting it as it's something to be alarmed, to me, is basically trying to sell the news and basically, alarm people. And fear always is the best seller of anything. This is going on for decades. It's nothing new. This is Jay Flores, and this is my reaction to Cartel Talk. Comment, like, and subscribe.